Hey, let's have an honest conversation about your hitting. What if I told you that building a seam-busting swing is actually quite simple? That when you have a proven process in place, making a good swing, it's inevitable. Well, today in this video, we're going to discuss the cornerstone of your hitting process. It's totally possible to create the path that will improve your skill set, that will lead you to become the player you want to be. So if you're a player struggling with your swing, then this video is for you. It will show you the fastest and the best solution to quickly improve. But before you say, yeah, right, Bill, I've heard all this before, I want you to lean into this training. Listen, I know you're disheartened because of all the hard work, all the effort that you've put in, the tee swings, the extra batting practice, the lessons, poring over the latest YouTube videos, all the time spent with very little to show. And worst of all, you end up right here where you began. So, if you're just starting out and you're a little overwhelmed with all the hype, all the opinions, and you find yourself chasing all the fads and styles, and you have no idea where to start, then no matter where you are in your journey, I want you to know that I hear you, I see you, I've been you, and I'm here to help you. As we get started, if you want to grab your free success path framework that shows you a plan that will transform your hitting, the exact framework that you and I will be talking about in this video and in future videos, just comment, send me the framework in the comments section, and I'll send you the link. Okay? All right. I'm so excited to help you because hitting is what I eat, it's what I sleep, it's what I breathe. I absolutely love this, and I know that you want a swing that not only leads to hits, but also creates confidence and earns you the respect of your teammates and friends and gives you control of your future. So within 9 or 10 swings, we can get a real quick win here. We're going to dive into it right now. But within 9 or 10 swings, I'm pretty close to a guarantee that by using this technique, you will improve right now. So let's go get us a win. Okay, so I want to talk about using right now, using two words, a mnemonic, using right now and how it relates to what is going on at the plate with our hitters. So a little bit of background here, okay? So if this was my little league aged hitter, what I will have is I will have the ability to stick at least 81 pitches in his strike zone. I have 9 boxes that I drew here, and within each of those boxes, I could put 9 different pitches. Now, if they were all the same pitch, all a fastball at 50 miles an hour, okay? That 50 changes, not on a radar gun, but in how it's perceived as a hitter, okay? So this is an idea. This is Effective Velocity, advanced by Perry Husband, tremendous mentor and instructor. What we're referring to as the ball moves closer to a hitter, it appears to gain speed. As it moves higher in the zone, it appears to gain speed. And as it moves away and down, it will appear to lose speed. So what happens is this 50 mile an hour, if I threw it to this young man or young lady, will appear to be 54 miles an hour. In and of itself, no big deal. But when you compare it to this one, right, as it moves away, it loses a little bit going away, it loses a little bit coming down. It starts to feel like 47 miles an hour. Okay, so for every 6 inches, it appears to gain a mile an hour. For every 6 inches towards the hitter, for every 6 inches up, right? That's how I arrived at 54. That's how I got down to 47 because I'm still in the strike zone. This is at the top of the strike zone over here. But here's the deal. This hitter has a speed gap. And that speed gap says if this pitcher can throw 3 or 4 or 5 miles per hour from the previous pitch, faster or slower, this hitter's going to struggle. Okay, now, if we just look at what I drew, we see there's a 7-mile-an-hour gap. Okay, and so now that's what's creating some of our issues. And if you look at timing, timing will have some pretty good visual feedback, right? We all know what early looks like. We'll see a hitter, he'll jut his butt out and he's reaching. A ball that appears to be faster, we'll see a hitter pull their elbows in, try to get the barrel closer to the ball. Well, the same thing, we're going to see this, the same thing will happen over and over and over again until we begin to understand what is going on with this hitter. Okay, so that's the first issue. Now, why does that happen? Okay, well, most hitters are human beings. No shocker there, okay? And what is very human, and it's, also emphasized and reinforced, is the idea of look for something, react to something. Well, when we get into those instances, it could be the same as, hey, let the ball get deeper. I don't know what that means, right? What happens is, instead of being at one end, the slower end or the faster end of the strike zone, we'll come and sit right in the middle, right? Okay, so how does the hitter hit? All right, well, when this hitter came up, he probably sits at 47, and pitchers will hit our ball bats quite a bit. But when this pitch happens, we get into trouble. Now, remember what I said. This was one pitch. This was a 50-mile-an-hour fastball. Now, if I have an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old that has a changeup, maybe they've got a curveball, all of a sudden, I have different speeds. Let's say it was a changeup at 45. Well, now all of a sudden, this number down here might turn into 41. And now I have a 13-mile-an-hour gap. That's pretty impressive, right? Doesn't mean that I can't hit it, but I probably won't consistently hit it, and I probably will lack a little bit of power. Okay, so this is what begins to happen to our hitters. Okay, now, so how do we work with our right now? So when we get together and we're working with right now, what's going to happen? We're going to use fingertips and impact. Okay, we use fingertips and impact. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when the ball leaves the pitcher's fingertips, we are going to say right, and as we're hitting the ball, we're going to say now, right now, right now. That is, in essence, that's the whole deal. That's it right here. But this is what happens in baseball. This is why it's very difficult to hit in baseball, is we're lacking feedback. What it is that we're trying to do from pitch to pitch, and how do I get that? Hence the words, hey, let the ball get deeper when I want my hitter to go to right field, or hey, you got to swing a little bit earlier if we're a little bit late on pitches, right? All fine and dandy. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to have a target, something that when you hit the ball that you are going to be able to physically put your finger on. So it could be the logo on the second baseman's cap. It could be the 2 in 210 feet sign that's in left center field. It could be the center fielder's inside shoulder if you're a right field shoulder, I guess you could say, if you're a left-handed hitter. Your targets are your targets. And when you're working, you will want to create different targets so you get the feel of different pitches. Okay? So, targets off the fingertips, and then right now. Okay? That's the essence of what we're trying to do here with our right now technique. Okay? So that becomes pretty important for us. So how I would use this is if I were at practice, working on my swings, and I've selected the second baseman's logo, and the first hit I hit over to the shortstop side, to the left field side, then I knew I was a little bit early, so I would adjust that right now to right now. Right now. Remember, it's always off the fingertips, and it's as I'm hitting the ball. And now I'm trying to get a visual feedback as to how I'm doing. And when this begins to happen, what you will find out is as your hitters begin to understand what velocity is, they begin to control velocity on this very first pitch, you'll see the power will pick up because now they're anticipating where that has to be, right? Where their barrel has to be in space and time. They're going to learn how to trust that barrel, which plays a factor in it as well. Okay, so again, leaving the pitcher's fingertips right as I hit the ball, it's now. So it would almost be right now, right now. And what I've come to find out is, as players, when we try to use our eyes aren't very good at hitting. And so what happens is we get a wow factor. We think someone is actually throwing exceptionally hard. So we used 50 in our example. Well, let's say he was a pretty good pitcher. Let's say he throws like 63, 64. He's a little bit taller for his age or whatever. Well, here's the difference. Here was the 50-mile-an-hour fastball right now. Here's the 63 right now. So when I start to hit with my ears, and I say this all the time, confirm with your eyes, straight lines, with hitting with your ears right now, right now. Okay, so that works on a lot of different levels, but for right now, it is our feedback mechanism. It is the mnemonic. It is right now. Okay, so let's continue. Let's get back to a little bit more here. Let's understand a little bit more on what's going to happen then in that success path. So as we get a clear understanding of these foundational principles that will build not only your swing, but will give you a tested and proven process that's going to lead you to your goals, these principles will give you real on-field results that will take you from that feeling of being dejected to experiencing the thrills of success, as they used to say on ABC. But before we get to the solution, let's talk about some of the symptoms of a poor swing. And please understand that there are quite a few reasons why your problems probably aren't the result of anything that you've done, but they're probably the result of some incomplete or some misinformation or the way that you've heard some things. Okay, so first, let's get to the easiest thing to blame, and the easiest thing to blame is mechanics. And most hitters have been tricked into believing that all hitting issues are mechanics oriented, but yet no two people move alike. So how can we all use someone's idea of the same mechanic? So there's more to swinging than just physical movements. So let's start with some of the swing issues that might be happening here. First one would be the idea of using the wrong movement pattern, right? Not necessarily a mechanic per se, but perhaps we're using a movement pattern that befits someone who's ground-oriented, someone who likes to flex the knees deep and use the ground and rotate through the middle and roll out to the front side. Or maybe they're upper body oriented, right? So they have a little more bounce, a little less flexion, okay? They're a little bit more in line. So you'd hear Coach Matt Swope and Dave Jeunesse, they talk a lot about being associated and dissociated, which is basically, do they stay in line with their shoulders, or do they create like an X pattern across the back hip, okay? So there could be some several things, several issues that are going on right there, and some of it is just because we're using an improper physical model for a hitter, right? It could be that we just misunderstand how that hitter is trying to pull some slack, and I see this one quite a bit,
we'll see it where hitters want to be slightly closed, and all of a sudden they're being taught to want to straighten up with their feet. There is a way that works quite effectively, and we see a lot of hitters going across the body. We see Altuve, we see Trout, we saw Cabrera, we see we see lots of kids. All right, there's lots of kids at those upper levels that we see pulling it, and it was Mr. Judge I was thinking of. So we see some of that happening. So we don't want to impose constraints on our hitters, right, on how they want to move. Yes, we sometimes have to reel that in a little bit, but I just want to make sure that we understand that. Then next, it could be the idea that it's misused verbal commands. Okay, so there's what we say and there's what our intent is as coaches, and there's what players hear and what they attempt to do. And my experience has always been players hear it exactly as it's said and they try to repeat that. So there has to be a lot of communication going in. We want to understand the players' use of words, so it's important that we're always getting their feedback. There's internal feedback that a player has. It's what he's thinking, right? And then there's actually what he's doing. And then there's external feedback, and that's basically what we give as coaches. It's what we're giving. An example of that would be, a lot of times we'll talk about hands inside the ball. Well, I understand what is being said there, but I would say I'm not a big hands inside the ball individual, because even when that happens, I could keep my hands. If the baseball was here and I had my hands inside, what will happen a lot of times, the barrel will leak around. We'll lose the connection at the wrist, right, at that fulcrum, and that barrel will slip around the ball. And that will cause us some issues, right? Whereas if we were to describe this as barrel inside the hands, I'd be a lot more comfortable with that. Without understanding that barrel is going to stay inside my hands as I rotate my swing, right? And it could be that this hitter likes to be close to his body. Could be everything that's happened in his past. It could be that he wants to have space. So all of this has to come into being, right? We have to understand these items. Then finally on my board, we have what I would call understanding velocity, right? Well, the problem with understanding velocity, as we saw in the first part of the video here, was velocity creates velocity traps. And if we don't understand velocity traps, and we start our swing the same time every time, we're going to be inconsistent. And that's the piece that drives hitters crazy, because they can't understand why they hit balls hard one time, and then the next time it's off the end of the bat, or it's getting jammed, because they don't understand what is happening with velocity, how the ball lives inside of the strike zone, how that strike zone lives and breathes. And so that becomes an area that can lead to swing issues. All of these items, right, from how we talk to how we try to set a hitter up to what is actually going on from pitch to pitch, they can all lead to swing issues, and they all express themselves as something physical. And so yes, it could be as simple as a poor first move leading to loss of a bat gap where I'm throwing my hands first. It could be that I'm loading over the back foot, which makes my rotation less desirable. It could be that I move my hands before I'm using my middle. So all of these can lead to these swing issues. So let's take a look at some of the foundational aspects then that you're going to want to repeat and duplicate so that we can avoid some of these issues. And so without these building blocks, you simply aren't going to have a structure of the sustainable swing, the swing that can allow you to grow with yourself, right? So as we begin to build the process, let's start with this idea. Let's look at this principle here of understanding of how my hitter wants to move. Is my hitter ground oriented, or is my hitter upper body oriented or shoulder oriented, as I have written here? So a ground oriented player, hitter, they're going to want to be a little bit deeper. They've got a little more flexion in their knees, right? They like the idea of lowering their hips, and they like their hips to move close to their knees when they're moving forward. You might see them want to use corkscrews to help pull some slack out. They're using that corkscrew as a counter move, okay? They like to roll into the front foot, and they have that beautiful finish, that big full finish that we like to see. It's very pleasing to the eye. This is what we think of when we think of hitting, okay? As opposed to this upper body, shoulder oriented player. Now this player, they're going to want to keep their hips a little bit higher. They'll probably pull with the upper body a little bit easier. Okay, they have less flexion in that backside. So they're more likely, their butts are more likely to be underneath them rather than pushing out a little bit like in the hip hinge that a ground-oriented player will use. They get into their front leg a little easier, and they get in there well. They can stick it pretty well. And the tendency for them is to come across that body a little bit because that hip has stuck so well. So you'll see players, that's much aligned like Altuve or Aaron Judge, some of the more well-known players. Okay, so they have that stronger finish. It's a little shallower. Okay, and so neither is right, neither preference is wrong. It's just how they prefer to move. So rarely is any hitter on, all upper, all lower. Most fall between the two areas to some varying degree. And probably what you'll find out though is they have a preference in how they want to work. Okay, it's how they hear. So their instruction has to meet that preference, okay? It would be hard for me if I was an upper body-oriented hitter and I hold my breath when I swing. So when I'm holding my breath, my lungs fill with air and my lungs start to push up against my rib cage. Well, it's going to be hard for me to create shoulder and hip separation. It's a lot of what we like to see. Actually going to work against me. It's going to create a constraint, okay, for me. So we want to make sure that we're using good verbal commands. That absolutely is an essential for what we're doing here in this very first part. So how do I identify my hitter? One of the easiest ways, one of the best ways, is just to look at them running. Jogging and running. So sometimes we can be fooled a little bit by a jog. But what I'm looking for, I'm just looking at like foot plant and upper body players. They're more likely to land on the balls of their feet. They have that forward lean. Whereas ground-oriented players, they're middle of the foot to the heel, and it looks like they're pulling themselves forward. Okay, it's how the body is moving. It's how they're trying to move their middles, okay? So when we sprint, sometimes it's a little bit different. We get a real good understanding of there. So that helps me to identify this first area, or at least get an idea of how they would like to move, okay? Once we understand it, once I get an understanding of how it is I'm trying to do, now we start looking at what makes a physically efficient swing. If you remember at the very beginning, I said, hey, making a swing is really easy. Unfortunately, it's really easy to destroy a good swing. And basically, I think that's what we've done with hitters. We've coached them into some bad swings. And so what I want to do is I want to go back, and yes, there is a place for mechanics. I just don't think it's at the level that we have it put today, right? So for me, there are 7 attributes that we want to do. We want to create an efficiency. I'd like to be 100% on time, 100% on the barrel. So in order for me to do that, I want to begin to understand how it is I make my swing and what it is I need to understand in order to make that swing. And so I have a good working understanding of my swing. So anytime I can have a conversation with someone, I understand what I do well and what I don't do well. So what does that mean? What are those attributes, Bill? Okay, the first is a stretch, right? I'm trying to pull slack out. I'm looking at lead arm. I'm looking at, can I pull slack out of the middle? Am I pulling slack out of the shoulder? Is the barrel inside my hands? So, again, the two different movement preferences, they're going to have different ways of doing things. Upper body guys, you'll see they're going to want to pull stretch out of the upper chest and out of the upper back. So there are differences. There are some differences. But again, we're trying to create stretch. Then we'll look at absorption. Every time I hit a ball, my body's going to absorb some energy, right? It's going to come out of the velocity of the pitch being thrown as it hits my bat. We've seen videos where it vibrates back into us, or we break bats, or whatever it is. But what I'm trying to do is to eliminate as much of that absorption as I can. So we're going to work on getting locked out at the baseball. One of the third attribute, one of the attributes that we're looking at is forward momentum. How a player wants to move to the ball, right? How can they create body speed to the ball? And so when we see that, we might see the upper body oriented player. You might see the foot come up off the ground, whereas you might see the ground oriented player be a little more anchored. Then we're looking at leverage, how it is that we're creating that first move. Can I get into a good first move position? A lot of that will have to do with how I like, not so much the stride, but I would say leg lifts, high or low leg lifts, toe taps, no strides, those such things, right? And again, if this starts to feel like I'm throwing a fire hose at you, please understand, there are videos on all of this, all right? So just do a search for it, and several will come up. Then we'll work on sweet spot awareness, and I have a belief that hitters are uncomfortable when they don't understand where their barrel is in space and time. I think it causes them to rush a little bit, so we spend some time there. And so when we're doing all of this, we are working on all of these attributes, these 5 attributes. Then as we get into it, maybe we go down to 2 or 3, and then we're down to 1 as we continue to work with our timing areas. But we're going to take all 5 of these, and we're going to put them all together, and that creates that 6th attribute, which is body timing. How it is I'm making my swing. Am I efficient with that swing? And we'll do some testing with that as well. And then we put that all together with what we've talked about already, and that we put that all together with the third understanding here. It is that invaluable cornerstone foundational block that we started this with, and that is with the use of right now. Okay, so we take all those attributes, we marry pitch timing with body timing, and we do that through the effective velocity technique of right now, because one of the hardest skills to acquire in the game is the ability to create usable feedback. And so what happens, we'll get comments, let the ball get deeper. Or if I'm working on the inside corner and I've been late, I get the, hey, you got to start earlier. Well, those are pretty vague comments just thrown out there that leads to a lot of confusion and fog to a hitter. And as a hitter, I need to have clarity. And so I need to begin to understand what that actually means. Remember, it only takes 1/1000th of a second to throw off a hitter. I'm either going to swing through it, or I'm going to be way out in front of it, maybe roll it over or such. And so how do I do that? Well, through that use of the right now, we begin to understand the one thing. And that one thing is understanding the shape of the pitch, the speed of the pitch, and the location of the pitch, right? Each and every one of those items, they create that one thing. And that's how I hit. I'm not trying to look for, react to. I'm only trying to do one thing. Okay? And so that's how we start to do this. So when we get into our practice, when we start our training, that's what I'm doing. We're going to use our right now. We're going to get our feedback to that. Am I on time? Am I early? Am I late? And we just keep working through that. Okay, so here we have it. This is the foundation. This is what I would refer to as being on deck. This is in that framework. This would be first base. And this is the first items that we need to have. Okay, so the rest of that framework, those are other videos. Just hang tight. We'll get those out to you here as soon as possible. But I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please get a hold of me. If you have any comments, please add those in there. If you haven't picked up that framework, again, go to that comment section. Just send me the framework or send any question that you have. I'd be glad to help out as best that I can. And I thank you for being here today. Till the next time, hey, this is Coach Bill. Talk to you soon.